Hey guys, this is KSP with Tape, and today you join me for episode 22 of KSP Road to Exploration. And today we start with a launch, which is bound for the space station for Hermes. Yes, this is another module. I'm launching a science lab today so that I can do science on the station. Now, I know that the science lab has changed a bit over time. It used to just refurbish experiments, but now that can be done by just a scientist. And my understanding was if you put it somewhere interesting, you can get science just by researching, but what you actually need is some experiments to do research on to produce data. So I'll have to get some experiments from maybe the moon or something. But yeah, anyway, I'll send it up. It'll be nice. It'll be an extra thing on the station, and it could be very useful. So yeah, we'll just have that. Just did the re-entry burn for the first stage of the Pulsar 2 that is on board of. It's a relatively light payload, so we can launch it on the lighter vehicle, which is nice. It's slightly cheaper. Yeah, so this is the lab. It also has a couple of interesting looking boxes there, which I'll explain in a bit, and also a small RCS store so we can store more monopropellant. Anyway, that's well on its way, and this will come back. Anyway, you've seen this do its re-entry quite a lot of times, this first stage, so we'll just show you landing it on, show me landing it on the ocean. So there it is, all nicely and reused. And we're back in orbit with the second stage and things, and we've actually arrived right at the station, which is rare for me. Usually I come up a little bit in front of it and have to do an orbit to get to it, but apparently I planned it slightly better, so we're going to try and get to the station quite quickly because, well, might as well. I've got quite a bit of fuel left, and it would be nice just to dock this, but obviously doing aggressive maneuvers to maneuver into a station is actually often not the best way of doing things. So, yeah, we do drift in pretty close, and we have enough fuel back on the second stage for re-entry and landing, which is all good. So yeah, let's decouple this and have it head on over there with its RCS. There will be a couple of, well, 4 RCS thrusters left on this, so I guess the station can now technically move, but it also always has vehicles on it, so if it really needed to move, if there's going to be some sort of debris heading for it, which is unlikely but not impossible, it could move using the vehicles. And the space station does that. I believe it uses the Soyuz capsules to move the station around occasionally, just in case something's going to hit. I may be wrong about that. Maybe it does have its own reaction control systems, but I know they do move the station occasionally. In fact, Tim Peake posted an interesting video of him sitting in the station when it was doing its maneuver, and he was moving back through the spacecraft because the spacecraft was moving relative to him, which I didn't think would happen because he's part of the system, he's in the air. I thought he'd just move with the station, but he was moving relative to the station, which was pretty cool. But anyway, here we are, just docking to the top. I'll elongate this, I guess. I would like to put some things on the sides to make it look slightly more interesting, so have another module maybe where one of those Ares vehicles is. But yeah, anyway, here we are just landing the second stage. It's actually in the foothills behind the KSC, which was interesting, so I'll get a little more money back for it. And it lands pretty well, even though it's on land, and we get a little more money than usual back for that, which is nice. But anyway, here we are at the station. So the first thing I'm going to do is put our scientist Bob in the research lab, and yeah, I start the research even though I have nothing to research, so I guess that's just going to do nothing until I bring it some science. Which should be interesting. But anyway, those boxes, what are in those boxes? Well, in this one, there are a few tools. Yes, this is the Kerbal inventory system. It provides a few tools which work with Kerbal attachment system, which will allow you to remove and attach small parts. So I'm going to have a little play around with that, see what I can do. And in the other one, there's a few cans of RCS, EVA propellant, so Kerbals have more delta V, which I doubt I'll need, but I brought it up anyway. So yeah, here we are. Here I am just testing this out. I'm going to try and detach one of these solar panels, which aren't super relevant anymore, so I might detach them all at some point. And it doesn't look detached, but it actually is. If we cut ahead here, you can see it's flipped out a bit, and I knock it away. Yeah. I actually spent a lot of time reading the manual trying to figure out what all the buttons do, because it's very different from when I last used Kerbal attachment system, as you can see me trying to just strap it to the Kerbal. But yeah, Kerbal inventory system means that if you want to carry something around, you just put it in your inventory. And I just have the wrench out here, which allows me to use move around small parts, but I also have like a drill thing that allows you to do slightly bigger parts. So I'm just going to put that back there. It's actually not attached because I forgot to do that, but I'll do it in a second. It's just placed near the station. Anyway, so I was thinking, this Ares spacecraft no longer needs the extra module for solar panels. I can just reattach them over here, so I don't have to take that annoying docking adapter everywhere that had the solar panels on it. So that's all good, and I'm just going to throw this back on here and be in. So we've slightly improved our vehicles, and everything's good. But anyway, we have another launch. on top of Pulsar 2. This is bound for the moon. Yes, we have something heading for the moon, and you may be thinking, don't you usually land on the moon with that lander? You have it in orbit already, and you'd be right about that, but this is not a lander. This is the first part of a moon base. I've had a contract for a while to build a moon base, and I've kind of been putting it off while I get the station all working. But yeah, today we are sending our first module. It's just a big battery pack, really. I'll explain the reasoning for that in a little bit. But yeah, it's just launching up here. It's relatively light due to various things I had to do to make it work. And you can see here, it's pretty much just a big-ass battery. That comes from, I think, I don't know, I have some kind of mod that gives you a bunch of base parts, and it gives you some seriously sized batteries and some cool modules that allow you to attach things in interesting ways. But anyway, I'm going to get this to orbit first and then land the second stage because I had a little time. And here it is, the first stage, and here it is just coming down nicely on the ocean. And we'll recover that for fun and profit, I guess. And here's the second stage coming back a little later. And a little closer to the KSC, and we'll recover that, and all will be good. So yeah, full rocket recoverability. But this is the vehicle. It has enough fuel to get to and land on the moon. We'll pick out a nice landing site. It has radiators, solar panels, these cool little solar panels. They're kind of, I guess, medium-sized solar panels added by, I think, again, the base, the interplanetary bases pack, I think it is. But yeah, so hopefully this will provide enough electric charge, because on the surface of the moon, it's tidally locked towards Kerbal, which means half of its orbit it's going to be facing away from the sun, because if you imagine that it's one side of it's always facing towards Kerbal, that means half the time it'll be facing away from the sun. So this is 6 days of battery power, because the moon has an orbital period of 6 days. So I thought I'd take enough battery power to sustain the Kerbals for a whole orbit, even though it would only have to technically sustain them for half an orbit, because you can imagine that it'll only be in orbit for... it'll only be facing away from the sun for 3 days out of its 6-day orbit, but I thought I'd bring enough just to make sure, so that Kerbals don't have to leave the surface every 6 days, which would be every 3 days even, which would be rather annoying. So yeah, this is quite expensive. It was originally designed, when I originally designed this, it was made for 15 Kerbals, but that was incredibly expensive, because to support 15 Kerbals without any power generation for that amount of time is very expensive. There's a lot of batteries and it's very heavy, and I would have had to use a bigger vehicle and more fuel, so I've just brought it down to 5 Kerbals, and that's the amount I have to have for my base to complete the contract. So I'm going to put it in this crater right at the edge, right on the edge of a couple of biomes, so that I can get between 2 biomes with a rover, and it's relatively central, so there are some more interesting biomes I would be able to get to with a rocket-powered vehicle. So anyway, let's touch it down here and find somewhere nice to land. I'm thinking this is good. It's nice and flat. It's in the crater. It's looking at Kerbal, so I will always have communications. Won't be super important, because obviously I will have Kerbals here eventually. But yeah, this is obviously just the first model. You can see it's just a big battery. It's actually technically 4 pieces of battery, and then it's all in this one container. I've landed on a bit of a slope, though, as you can see here, so I will have to find a better place for that. But yeah, this should be, and it'll also mark where I'm going to land, which will be nice. It'll be the first little marker of my base, and you can see I'm just checking here. I'm making sure there's a way out of this crater for a rover, so I'd like to put some Kerbals on a rover and go do some science like that when one day I eventually bring a rover, because there's a couple more modules. I need the Habitation module and the life support module, which is quite a big bulky thing and uses the base part, so it'll look quite cool, and you'll see a bit of that later in the episode. But yeah, we've got a nice view of Kerbal, which is always good. But this is a bit too slanty for my liking. It might make landing difficult. But luckily there's some flattish land pretty near to us. So let's do a quick jump over there after we've quick saved and things. So just taking off very gently. I've still got quite a lot of fuel left. And this also has lights, so in the dark we'll be able to see. And in the dark we will also be able to have enough power to keep us warm. That was the big problem, really, about having a planetary base, is, well, usually on planets like, obviously, Kerbal and Duna, you'd have about half a day outside of kind of life support range, out of the sun, so you wouldn't be able to charge up, and that would be fine, because half a day is quite easy to supply for, but 6 days is quite a lot of electric charge, so I have 14,000 in all of those batteries, which will be nice. And yeah, obviously it's probably going to generate most of the power as well. But yeah, just taking a look at this crater, it looks like there's a pretty easy path out of there. But anyway, I have another quick launch, just launch a little satellite, and I've designed this little vehicle. It's a 3-engine, tiny a liquid fuel vehicle which will attempt to be reusable because it has a few parachutes on it. I'm not sure it will be able to. It's obviously the first rendition, but I would like a very light reusable vehicle because it would be a bit pointless to use a pulsar for such a tiny payload. But anyway, yeah, it flips out quite annoyingly, and I have to fight that, obviously, because with these small rockets, it always seems to be the way. But I do manage it, and this has a lot of excess Delta V, because I will be using the moon to put myself in a relatively good orbit. But basically, everything that can go wrong with this mission goes wrong. So firstly, this first stage falls too quickly, and we can't recover it. Obviously, the flipping out was a bit annoying, and we're just going to put this in orbit now, and there'll be more problems throughout. But yeah, probably the smallest rocket I've ever used for putting something in... Oh, well, not the smallest. I have had made a very tiny launch vehicle for a few tiny satellites before, but the smallest effective vehicle, I guess. But yeah, so I'm just preparing this for its journey to the moon, and I'm very low on electric charge, and none of these engines generate them. But I decide to go anyway. But this engine, actually, on the probe is obviously very low thrust, so it's going to take a very long time. And I thought that the engine would shut down when I lose connection, but that's not what happens, and it begins to flip, and I start to lose Delta V. Luckily, it's flipping, so it'll stay in the right place and won't fly off to infinity. And eventually the engine does turn off for some reason. But yeah, so I still have enough Delta V to do this, I think. I put loads of Delta V on this, and I'm going to use the moon to put me in the right orbit, because this is called Moon Chaser, because it's going to be put in a orbit that's quite close to the moon. You see the big blue ellipse, that's where we've got to put it. So yeah, I'm just pushing myself onto the right trajectory to hit the moon. Obviously it's not quite right, because I screwed up my burn last time, and I'm trying to figure out how I can make it kind of do the right thing. And it looks like it might actually be more lucrative, more easier just to burn at the top of my orbit. So I kind of abandoned the idea of using a moon assist, but apparently the map is deceiving me, and it does put me on an encounter with the moon anyway. So I performed this burn, well, I'm going to perform this burn to put me on roughly the right orbit, which will be nice. Because I will save a little fuel like that, and yeah, I just have to do a slight deorbit burn. But then, for some reason, when I warp past the moon too quickly, it puts me on a completely different orbit, and I have to, you know, totally change it. It's fine because I have all the fuel, but basically everything that could go wrong went wrong with this mission, which was rather interesting. I'm just going to have a little sip of water because my throat is a little dry. But yeah, we are in the right orbit. That worked out. It was just a bit of a faily mission, which is always annoying. But anyway, big mission here. We are at Moho. We finally reached. I actually did skip a launch to do this in the episode, because I did technically have a launch between the last one and this, but I was very excited to get to Moho. So here we are. We are in the sphere of influence of Moho, and we're going to log all of the data and send it back, and then fly past. We're not going to orbit, because we don't have enough Delta V. But I could potentially fly back and maybe use some gravity assist to eventually orbit, but I'm actually thinking this might head on to Eve to fly into the atmosphere, because I have a mission to drop into the atmosphere. And it pays quite well, and this probe will be effectively useless after this mission, so that might be interesting. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just watching the flight computer telling me when the signal will finally arrive here, and I'll actually be able to take my scientific reports, and there's the first one. Pretty lucrative, actually. It seems like it's more than I have had from the other planets, but anyway, we'll transmit all of that back. Now, the main problem next is that I am going to be flying past Moho in the blind. There will be no communication, so I won't actually be able to take reports. However, if I set up a custom signal delay in the flight computer and then record the scientific data, it'll do that a certain amount later. So I'm going to set up a little under 25 minutes, like a 24-minute and 40-second delay. And then I'm going to record all of this data, and it'll take these reports when I fly past fly close to Moho, which will be nice, because we need the science, and we get all of our world firsts for flying close to Moho and sending scientific data back and things. However, we do lose a lot of power, and it looks like I'm not going to get any of the reports, but in actuality I get 3 of the reports and miss the materials bay. So I'm probably going to have to take the materials bay report from high above Moho instead of low down, which is slightly less lucrative, but that's fine. It's all good science. And yeah, you can see I'm just watching the clock on the flight computer, and I do get most of my reports, but then the electric charge runs down, which is a bit of a shame. Literally, I miss out by like 2 seconds. Oh no, I actually missed 2 of the reports. Oh damn, that means I didn't take the mystery goo. Alright, well, that's terrible, and I've missed out on that, but it means I still have a mystery. Oh, I wouldn't have been able to take the mystery go anyway, because I've already taken one from high above Moho, so I didn't miss out, which means I have an extra experiment to do somewhere else. So, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out which ones didn't get taken, and it was indeed the materials base. So, I fly out until I have a good a good lock on Kerbal and I have communications back. And yeah, just start taking reports and reviewing all the data so I can send it back. So yeah, I mean, a few things went wrong, but this was pretty successful. I have to say this flight computer is very useful. It allows you to do burns, well, tell the spacecraft to do burns at certain times when you won't have communications, and obviously take scientific reports. And it is a bit of a lifesaver. I wish I'd known about it sooner, because I did miss out on a few things. But yeah, just send most of that data back, but we'll just transmit all of that. But obviously with remote tech there is a signal delay because you have to send the signals. Anyway, here I am at Eve. I'm trying to do a quick retrograde burn to push myself in the atmosphere, but I'm totally out of fuel. And the fuel on the probe doesn't actually work, and decoupling it apparently doesn't push me down low enough. So this probe won't be able to do the mission of flying into the atmosphere, which I was hoping, because it pays very lucratively, and this is totally useless now, especially now that it doesn't have any fuel. But this will be stuck here for eternity, which may be good to have a communications thing. But I might send the Moho probe back to do that, to fly into the atmosphere. But anyway, very important launch now. This is our newest rocket. This is the Pulsar 4. Pretty much the biggest rocket we can make with our current launch pad and VAB. It has a huge lifting capability and has the ability to have a native third stage. As you can see at the top, there's a third stage, and this is taking something to the moon, the second part of our moon base, the Habitation module. And this will hopefully be reusable with a mix of propulsive and parachute landings, and you can see the first stage is finally burning out now. Its engines are set up actually in a square, much like the original Falcon 9s. You know, probably the Falcon 9s currently, they do a ring formation, much like my other Pulsar vehicles, but this one uses a square because, well, I was messing around. I was like, actually, that looks quite nice. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to put myself on a decent trajectory now with this huge upper stage, using a skipper engine, which, you know, will hopefully put me in, will help me, hopefully help me put myself in an orbit before I need to go and use that stage. That's almost an orbit, it's technically still in the atmosphere, but whatever. Anyway, so this is facing the wrong way, so using a bit of engine turning off, I try and get it facing retrograde. Annoyingly, I had this awesome piece of footage before the game crashed, where I landed this the first time, where it was heading down like front ways, and I pulled it up and actually flew the stage, but that didn't happen this time. It was much better. But yeah, you did get a proper look at the engine setup. It does look quite nice, very old Falcon 9-y. And just before landing, I lose communications, can't use the engines, and lose most of the stage. And it falls over before I can recover it, so I lose a bunch more of the rocket. So this was pretty unsuccessful. I guess I'm just going to need more communication satellites in low orbit. Also, scatterers being weird. So yeah, that sort of sucks, but it was the first time I've used this vehicle, so yeah. Anyway, after decoupling the second stage, I remember, oh yeah, I'm not technically in orbit yet, so I'm going to push both of these, the second stage and the spacecraft, into an actual orbit. And I will try to reuse that second stage at some point. Bit of a shame that I lost that first stage because it was very expensive, but it was the first time I'd used that vehicle, so I will have to get used to it a little more. But the Pulsar 3 and Pulsar 4, the one you just saw, and my other big vehicle, they do require communications and engines to land safely, so I will have to work on that in the future, I guess. Anyway, now we're just sending this on out to the moon, and while it's heading out there, I'll land the second stage. But yeah, this just uses a very small third stage. This whole rocket is designed for taking heavy payloads to the moon and Minmus. That's why it has an integrated third stage. It doesn't need it, but obviously it can use it without having to extend the fairing too much, which is nice. Anyway, this is just a quick shot of me deorbiting this second stage, and then just it landing. It is nice having that skipper engine. It does provide a lot of thrust, and it is relatively efficient, so that's all good. But this can land, it looks like, on just these 4 parachutes, but I do use the engines anyway because I have a little fuel left over and I didn't want to risk it after losing that first stage. But I am thinking this rocket will be very useful until I upgrade my facilities to allow me to use even bigger rockets. But yes, we get almost 10,000 back just for that second stage, which is cool. Anyway, here we are back, heading on to the moon, just flattening our trajectory so we can land close to where we need to. And this is using the base pack. You can see the parts look a lot more like a lot more like an actual base, rather than the kind of things we'd usually build in KSP with the hitchhiker containers and command modules. So I built myself kind of a method of landing this like this. Oh, and here I fly within like 50 kilometers of a couple of geosynchronous satellites, which I thought was really cool to actually get that close by accident, which was yeah, pretty nice just to see that sort of thing. You know, there's a lot of stuff in orbit now. You can see it's just a mess on the moon and around Kerbal. So yeah, I'm just going to put myself gently in orbit. Just going to put myself in orbit. Doesn't really matter how gently. And then I'm going to have to wait a few days until the base comes into sight, so into the light, so that I can see it when I. So that I can land in the light, because I'd rather land in the light than in the dark, especially given that this was extra expensive, because I had to pay for that first stage, which exploded. But anyway, yeah, we will come back now for... was that a seamless transition, or was it just... Oh no, it was two different bits of footage. Anyway, so yeah, let's just land this, hopefully right next to the battery. I've done landings a lot of times before, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But yeah, it's just using two of those little tiny Rocket Max engines and a couple of fuel tanks on its side to land. I was going to detach them, but, you know, mass constraints. But this will house 5 Kerbals. It will house 3 in the kind of... the big module, which is basically like the hitchhiker storage container, but in a more basey sense, and there's a command module in there as well, which also looks kind of like a base. After this, there will be a life support and tools supply, which will make this base fully operational, and we'll be using some interesting technology to make it more sustainable, like water purifiers, but that will all be in the next episode. And we're just gonna... yeah, just land this now, and it's actually flying pretty well. I do throttle this down a little bit because the thrust is a little unbalanced, because I did a few tweaks to make it fit in the vehicle. That's why the fuel tanks are slightly pressed in, because this was getting pretty close to the maximum amount of height you can have. But yeah, this also has some solar panels on it. The 2 on the fuel tanks were originally going to be detached because they aren't super needed, because it has that kind of medium/big solar panel on the top. But you know what, it is nice just to keep them on there. It does look kind of good. And we actually came down very close. I was actually impressed with myself. Usually, in the days of old, I would have very much trouble landing within 75 meters of a target on the surface in one try. But I guess my skills have matured. I want to be a tiny bit closer, though, than 70 meters, because I'm going to have to attach these things with these kind of fuel pipes, which I'm not sure will actually work now thinking about it. Anyway, that's a problem for another day. But yeah, there's a couple of Kerbal attachment fuel pipes on here which I'll have to hook up so I can transfer resources between various things. So I'm just going to fly this over to the moon battery a little closer so I can actually attach them. Also, it'll just be nicer to have the base all locked in. And yeah, I think I picked a pretty good landing site here. Just a nice flat land and in a nice crater. It's one where I haven't been before, so I'll be able to get science instantly. But yeah, you can see I'm just hovering this over there, and it'll all be nice. But I do love this pack. I've forgotten exactly what it's called. I think it's Interplanetary Bases Incorporated or something like that. It'll be in my mod video. But yeah, it does make it look much more like a base. And especially the kind of life support packs they add to it, it kind of integrates into this shape, which is quite nice, which you'll see next episode. But yeah, I'm just going to rotate this so that one of the doors is facing inward towards the middle of the base. But yeah, that is all looking good, really. I think this should be a pretty effective ground base once I've got the other modules in, and eventually a rover. And it's always nice to have a moon base, and the point of this is... obviously, I tried taking the landing gear in because I realised I've forgotten to put ladders on there, but it doesn't look quite as good, so I don't bother. But yeah, I think this will be very good for science. It'll allow me to stay on the moon for long periods of time, and it'll all be great. But anyway, that will all be in future episodes, so I hope you've enjoyed this. So this has been KSP with Tape. I will see you next time.